Hello, everyone. My name is Elle Burnett, and today I'm going to be talking about intimacy, identity, and belonging in the film Soulmate. Soulmate shows that identity is formed through intimate relationships and why belonging is so fragile in modern society. Today I want to talk about how Soulmate shows that identity is not something we build alone. Instead, it's something that forms through intimacy, especially through emotionally intense friendships. What stood out to me in this film is that the relationship between Chi Yue and An Sheng isn't just about friendship. It's about how two people shape each other's sense of self. Their bond influences how they see love, freedom, stability, and even who they think they're supposed to become. I think this matters because modern society often tells us that identity is individual, that we are independent, self-made, and self-defined. But this film suggests something different. It shows that belonging and identity are fragile, relational, and deeply emotional. Earlier in the course, we talked about family structure, gender roles, and social obligation. And this particular week, we shifted towards more emotional experience. So instead of asking, what role do you play in society? The focus became, who are you through your relationships? We went from institutional to relational. In Soulmate, we don't see identity being formed mainly through institutions like marriage or family authority. Instead, we see it forming through intimate emotional connection. The film suggests that while institutions shape us externally, it's emotional bonds that shape us internally. And sometimes those bonds are even more powerful than formal structures. One of the most powerful aspects of this film is how Chi Yue and An Sheng function as mirrors for each other. Chi Yue represents a certain kind of stability, structure, and social acceptance. She follows a more traditional path. An Sheng represents freedom, unpredictability, and emotional intensity, and she resists stability and moves constantly. But what makes their relationship so compelling is that each one reflects a life that the other both desires and fears simultaneously. Chi Yue is drawn to An Sheng's freedom, but she's also threatened by it, while An Sheng admires Chi Yue's stability, but she can't fully embrace it for herself. Their friendship becomes a space where they can explore alternative versions of themselves, and in that sense, their bond is not just supportive, it's transformative. They are shaping who they become through admiration, jealousy, dependence, and even competition, especially when it comes to love. This shows that identity is relational. We don't just decide who we are, we become who we are through comparison, emotional attachment, and shared history. Another important element is that their relationship resists clear labels. It's not purely friendship, not clearly romantic either. There's emotional intensity, physical closeness, jealousy, and longing. This ambiguity feels intentional. The film doesn't try to define their bond neatly or wrap it in a bow, and I think that's really meaningful. It reflects how lived emotional experience often doesn't fit into rigid social categories. Society likes to classify relationships, especially in modern society: friends, lovers, family. But this bond moves across those boundaries fluidly. That ambiguity also reflects tension between private emotional truth and public social expectations. What they feel doesn't always align with what society easily recognizes or validates. So instead of forcing a definition, the film allows their intimacy to exist in complexity, and that complexity feels realistic. The film also shows that belonging is fragile and uneven. Their connection is deep, but it's not stable. There are moments of distance, misunderstanding, and emotional imbalance. Intimacy creates vulnerability. The closer they are, the more they can hurt each other. And even as they grow older, that tension doesn't fully disappear. One idea from the lecture that stood out to me is that growth doesn't always mean resolution. Sometimes it means learning to live with that complexity. Even when they separate, they still shape each other's identities. Memory continues to influence who they are. The past doesn't disappear, it becomes part of their emotional structure. This suggests that belonging is not about permanence, but about impact. Some relationships don't last in the same form, but they permanently shape who we become. We can also think about social expectations intensifying their bond. In a society where family expectations and traditional life paths are strong, alternative forms of belonging may not always be recognized, especially with the same acceptance. If public institutions don't fully validate certain emotional experiences, then private relationships carry more emotional weight. That may be why their friendship feels so intense. It's not just companionship, it's emotional refuge and safety. It becomes a space where they can explore parts of themselves that don't fit easily into social norms. This tension between private identity and public expectation adds depth to the film. It shows how personal relationships can both resist and reflect social structure. Overall, Soulmate suggests that identity is not fixed or purely individual. It is relational, it is shaped through intimacy, memory, admiration, and even conflict. The film shows that relationships cannot be easily defined, but that doesn't make them less real or less important. If anything, the ambiguity makes the connection more powerful. It reflects how real emotional life is often complicated and unfinished. My main takeaway is that who we become is deeply influenced by the people who see us most clearly and by the people we can never completely leave behind. Even when relationships change form, their emotional impact remains. And in that sense, intimacy becomes a part of identity itself. And the biggest point of this presentation that I want to make and is in the backgrounds. So I have placed many different flowers all together in the backgrounds of these slides to make the point that these flowers individually are all very fragile. The stems are brittle and the leaves can tear apart very easily. These represent individuals, individual human experiences. But together, they come together and create these beautiful bouquets. And it just proves that together we can use our vulnerability as strength and that all relationships aren't pretty. Not all flowers go together, but that's what makes us more beautiful. Soulmate suggests that identity is not stable or individual, but relational and shaped through emotionally intense connections that both create belonging and expose vulnerability at the same time. Thank you guys so much for watching.